Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe, your safe place to talk about anything strange, fringe, paranormal, conscious related, honestly, anything that you probably wouldn't talk about at the dinner table in front of your really conservative friends. Or maybe you do, and that's awesome if you do. But tonight I have the honor of having Alexei. I'm going to mess. How do you say your last name?
Novitzky.
Novitzky. Okay, I heard
Yeah.
you say it on the videos, but I was like, I'm gonna mess this up either way. But he is a really cool guy. Before I have him introduce himself, I want to say thank you to anybody listening live right now in the chat. So, Kat, Elena, Baby Goat, thank you so much for coming. And I want to say thank you to anybody listening later, either on YouTube or Anomalous Podcast Network. Like, subscribe, and there's other ways to support in the description below. And Alexei's website is in the description as well. So if you're looking to where to find him, that's where you can go. So Alexei, let's tell everybody who you are and how did you get into this whole consciousness study married with physics and the
Yeah.
UFOs? Like, how did it all happen?
It's kind of like a lifetime thing, honestly. So I've been learning in my dreams since the age of 5. Like the easiest way to describe it for me is that I literally wake up knowing how to do things I never knew how to do before, although I had been thinking about them, and so I go to sleep in sort of like a pondering state. And then you could say I have
Mm,
very, very extremely lucid dreams at that
wow.
point. So the very first time I rode a bicycle was in my dreams. I woke up, I went straight to my brother. I said, I know how to ride a bike. And he took the training wheels off my bicycle. He was 6 and I was 5. And I just hopped on and rode in circles, by myself in the garage.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been kind of just like learning in my dreams. And so then growing up, you always hear like this stuff's not real, right?
Right.
Like telekinesis isn't real, telepathy is not real. And it's like, well, for me, it is very real, And so I bought one
Yes.
of Uri Geller's books at like the age of
Oh,
9.
nice.
And I started practicing like remote viewing, crystal dowsing, very basic like telekinesis kind of stuff. And so I started meditating a lot. And then when I was about 10, you could say in one of my very deep meditations, I saw a gray being come down and it held out both of its hands. And it showed me the delusions of mankind, how like we put the rocks where they are, we create the philosophies. Basically, man creates everything. Like you have a natural earth, and then you
Yeah.
have man-made creations get thrown on top of it.
Wow.
And so from there, it was kind of like, as far as meditation goals, stay free of delusion, but still learn everything as much as possible, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so in order to tie that information into modern physics, I went and got my bachelor's in astrophysics, physics, planetary science, and astronomy with a minor in geology from the
Wow.
University of Colorado, and then also a master's in mechanical engineering from the University of South Florida, because I want to build technologies in order to take people into space. So that's kind
That's
of where my company is headed, is towards space tourism, you could say, like in the
that's
future.
very cool.
Let's say
Yeah,
20 years from now, that's what I want to do.
that's great, and I
Yeah.
think that you, when I first looked at your website, I was like, "What's this? A crazy skateboard that just, like, float." It's cool,
Well, that's
so
its own thing too.
y
Yeah.
that looks like fun, though. It looks, like, dangerous. Like, I know my husband would try to get on it and probably break something, but but I have little boys, so
I'm in
I'll have to
I was gonna say I'm in my lab now. I have a couple different ones. I could show them real quick if you want me to.
Oh, yeah, sure, we can do whatever. This is a laid back I was gonna ask you, what sort of things you do in your company because you are an author, which I love, and you are in the astrophysics and all this. This is insane that you're doing this with geology, and all I could think of is, like, the connection that I learn in my spiritual practice, like as above so below, and I find so many things translate right into physics. Now I only took physics like 1 and 2 because that's all I needed for molecular biology,
Yeah.
but it's if I had the math brain I would have stuck with all of that because it is so fascinating how all these little things are and aren't here, and it's mind-blowing. So you have your company, Looshes Labs, and you said you want to eventually work on space travel. But what are you doing right now with Looshes Labs?
Well, a lot of different things. So I started with the skateboard, and basically from there moved on to, you could say, boats and ferries, like dredge barges and ferries. But then my biggest project in the naval architectural realm is called the cubic yacht, which is called the mansion yacht nowadays.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's like the VIP lounge for the international boat shows here in Florida, out in Fort Lauderdale and
Mhm.
Miami.
Oh, very
And
cool.
yeah, no, so it ended up being like super successful as far as boats. But this second, I'm basically working on a marina, is the easiest way to put it, as well as podcasts, writing books, working with the University of South Florida on the skateboard still. We just shot some really cool drone footage like 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah, doing just all kinds of different things. I'm also like working on some music because I'm working on like a tour that
Oh,
basically
wow.
ties the concepts from the book into music.
That's gonna be amazing. I haven't found a lot of music, like, that's not super meditation, like spa music.
Right,
I found one girl that does, like, what she does an EDM version, but it's a meditation, activating your Merkaba, and that's the only thing I've found that isn't, like, super, like, chill, which I love. So it'll be interesting what you do. What kind of, so you play all these I'm assuming you play more than one instrument because it seems like you
well,
got plenty of brain there, you know?
this
Plenty of
is
talents.
this is not the best one I have. I have a different one around here somewhere, but this is actually like a Helmholtz resonator. So it's just like literally a little sphere, but it's like a
Oh,
flute.
wow.
Wait. So not the best one. The other one I have works way better.
Oh, that's very
But
cool.
it's totally random. But no, like as far as instruments, I mean, I play the piano. That's like the instrument I'm classically trained on. And then I wouldn't say I really play anything else. I can dabble in guitar and
Okay.
stuff like that. But
That's
yeah, I play
awesome.
piano. That's what I do.
It's super cool when people have these really deep concepts and bring them to life in different ways.
Right.
So, so you've been making contact with, would you call them interdimensional beings, or are they both? Because I've had an experience where I've been told by them that they are both somewhere, but also here in consciousness.
Right.
Um, so how do you experience physics and what people call ETs or interdimensionals or UFO, UAP? I don't know what term you like. People use all sorts of different terms. So,
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's most likely, or mostly rather, telepathic, straight up communications like that. And then it's typically accompanied with shooting star events.
oh, wow.
So basically, it's a flash of information. I literally can't even see what's in front of me. So I'm sitting here, I'm staring at like clearly like right now I have skateboards and my 3D printer, but like
Mhm.
I wouldn't be able to see it. I'd be able to see like
Yeah.
basically just whatever the vision is, and then yeah, I mean that's the easiest way to put it, really. Um, as far as like what I think they are, they're probably I think it's you could say multidimensional. So like,
Yes.
but it's all created from one energy source, and so they are us and we are them when it comes
Yes.
to like you could say overlapping energy that actually creates you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense to me because I read a lot of weird things, but it also, I think that there's ancient teachings that kind of say this in their own way too, and people just like don't listen. So I think it's great that you're tying it into physics because that's what people want. You can show them like, thousands of year old texts, that try to say that in their, and they say it in their own way. But when you say it like this, other people are going to like understand you more
yeah.
than they
I
would
mean, I do
understand
my
that.
best to write to the scientific community. And I myself, I went through studying science over in college,
Yeah.
the University of Colorado. So I understand how most people think and how you could say the scientific method works. And so I do my best to address. I use the theory of evolution because that's what I start with. Because we evolved on Earth. That's good. Okay. So as we evolved from a single-celled organism, you could say our senses also evolved, right? And so as we gain senses, we gain awareness. And so to say that we're at where we can see everything right now would not be to understand evolution.
Right.
So that alone kind of gets scientific minds thinking, okay, well, we did evolve, and as we evolve, senses evolve, our perception gets bigger, it becomes more fine tuned. We gain senses, um, so it just shows in a scientific way that just to begin with that there's more than the eye can see, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the start as far as addressing the scientific community, is to get them to look a little bit beyond the physical. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Which is funny because when you learn, like, when you first even start learning about physics, you learn that physical is not really how we see physicality or we're told physicality is happening. It's all this weird sensory input that our brain is just throwing together, and it's crazy that it makes sense to us. But because I remember tripping out on that when I was like little. They were talking about atoms, and this is when you still had like the wrong, like it looked like the solar system. You're
Mhm.
second grade learning about this stuff, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like my desk isn't here. Hey, teacher, my desk isn't here, and they're like, no, we didn't mean that. But then later on, I'm like, you did mean that. But, you know,
I mean, it's here. Like the world we live in is definitely a physical environment
yes.
that exists. I mean, there's no question to that. For people, I mean, so that's where it's hard to say that, it's not real. It's definitely real
Right.
to us. There's no
Yes.
question. But it wouldn't be real. It's not real in the sense let me rephrase. It is real. So I'm getting all excited. But it's being projected, right, from a
Okay.
higher dimension. So that's when, when it's like it's a projection, it's a simulation. It's a very real thing, but it is being projected, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that I always got lost in, just thinking about it, because you can think about it for a long time, and then you come across things like the many worlds theory. And I think that you had explained that when you were talking about your how consciousness worked in almost like layers. So
Yeah.
how does and I'm not sure if I was understanding it right. So the sphere that you talk about, and it's a diagram, but is that a point in time? That's one point in time, because you said that's where your consciousness expands to, like, now,
Yeah, I
but
mean
it doesn't account for like the whole universe. It's just, but it's still
every
pretty big, even if it is
it's
one point.
huge. It's absolutely infinite. And so it's every single point in space has a unique light state. And so if everything is relative as far as perception and motion. And you could say that our universe that we experience is literally just energies that are moving with the same relative motion as we are. Um, and so every single point in space has a very unique light state, is a good way of putting it. And so
Okay.
at the most fundamental level, we're on Earth, Earth goes around sun, sun goes around galaxy. At that point, we think the universe is expanding. That is our perception of the universe, and that is our experience of the universe in this layer of reality. But at the most fundamental level, you have a consciousness perceiving a field of energy. And so basically, you have a consciousness, and then you have relative motions with relative energy. And so our perceptions are literally being stretched and crunched into existence based off of a relative frame of motion. And so depending on how close you are to center of this structure, like basically the greatest black hole of all time, would be your stretch and crunch ratio, how that energy is being stretched and crunched. And so there's
That's
an
great.
orbital aspect to all motion, that's basically kept out of current equations, um,
Why is that?
because it's not needed. Because
Okay.
that basically everything that we use describes motion relative to itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
that
when you
makes
start describing motion relative to lower and higher dimensions, you need to throw in that orbital aspect.
right.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, and that's like the relationship essentially to 0 point energy, is because like, yeah, E equals mc squared, but it also equals more energy, as in the relationship between dimensions. And when you consider open systems like an absolutely infinite universe of spiraling inwardness towards infinity and extending from outward from infinity, you see that there's actually infinite energy in every
Yeah.
single point in space. Um, yeah.
That's pretty mind-blowing, and through yeah, I love it, I love it. And I'm trying to, like, I'm getting, like, pictures in my head when you're talking about it, so,
Yeah. I mean,
that's
I
why
have drawings too. I can share a lot of stuff too.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
whenever you wanna share, if there's something you want to share, I think that you can just hit share, and I can give you, like, the screen to share. So how does this, relate to, 'cause I think I saw that you tweeted somebody was asking how consciousness and the phenomena of UFO kind of, like, interact.
Yeah. I mean, I think this might help. I'll open a drawing right now.
Okay.
Well, I have a whole bunch of drawings I could open. But this is one that I've been using quite a bit lately, so I'll share this one.
Okay, so at the bottom, you should have an option to share.
Yeah, I was just trying to find it real quick.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if you.
I didn't want everyone to be seeing my screen.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I forgot to warn you about that, but you know.
No, you're good. Now I can't find it. There it is. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. I just have to add it. Okay, so I'm going to add this in. Okay, so explain what this is. And if you're listening on audio, I'll make sure that Andy has the link to my YouTube so you can look at these cool diagrams. But
Basically, if you want to say that our entire four-dimensional experience, and I say that we live in a four-dimensional experience because we have X, Y, and Z motion, right? But then we also have our perception of time, meaning like forward and backwards. So I call that the fourth dimension. Fifth dimension would be if you're moving right here and like expanding outward or compressing inward. It's the easiest way to describe it. But so this right here would be our layer of the universe. Because at the most fundamental level, you could say consciousness or perception is what allows us to work with the universe. And we're only awake and perceiving our world when we're in an alpha, beta, and slow gamma state of consciousness, which is basically centered around 20 hertz. When you go into fast gamma, that's when you actually, you have a near-death experience, or you do something like a DMT journey. You go towards the fast gamma, and you're at 80 hertz. So you go more towards the noviverse as far as perceiving energy. When you go to sleep, the theta state, kind of like at the witching hour at 2:30 in the morning, you're more in the lower verse. And so those are different fields of energy that you're actually your consciousness is actually harmonizing to, and those are what create your experience, right? So our waking state, our physical reality, is the layer of the universe, and that really is like the easiest way to explain it. And each one of those has orbits, right, based off of acceleration towards center at light speed, basically like being in a giant black hole.
okay, that's
Yeah,
that is so nuts to think about. I've never heard anybody kind of talk about it this way with like solid physics terms, because we hear a lot of the, people trying to say this, but they don't have the words for it. So
right.
I think it's beautiful how you have the diagrams and you have the words for it. So you talk about kind of like a liquid crystal state or liquid light. What does that mean?
I call that the liquid light state of the
Okay.
universe.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically the very first book I wrote is called, I have them all right here just so I can show you. But the very first one is called Your Influence in Space. And it shows like how your body's light encompasses the entire universe. So basically there exists at least one relative frame of motion, like where where your energy is already at infinity. And so from that, what we realize is that everything's relative, right? Matter is constantly always blipping in and out of solidity. The field of energy that we're experiencing is based off of relative motions. And so things don't really move through space, but more so manifest through space
Okay.
as matter blips in and out of solidity, right? And so we call that the liquid light state universe. And that looks like this, where I introduce the mind, body, and spirit diagrams that basically show like central nodes of creation and how wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations act like pebbles being tossed into this pond of the universe, creating distortions and ripples that go outward, overlap with other people's ripples, create the distorted
Right.
universe that we experience. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
And
and
we
so
know
that
that,
basically,
inherently, we kind of know that if you're like a empathic or you're aware of your own energy.
right? Yeah, I mean, like you just have. I even just think it's like straight normal physics. I mean, at the end of the day, I am a light bulb. I am an infrared light bulb. So like just I am radiating outwards. And
Yes.
so I say that every single point in space has a unique light state, right? Because this book has, a certain field of energy coming towards it and off of it. So that would be its light state. Literally, this sphere of empty space has a unique light state. This spot right here has so every point in space has a unique light state. And you can define the light state of a sphere through the use of magic squares. and how the energy within the space overlaps to create patterns that are then perceived by people from different positions.
Yes.
And that's extremely important when it comes to UAP and stuff like that.
Okay, in what ways? Because I know that a lot of people have experienced telepathic communication. We've witnessed them, and I love how you said, like, blipping in and out, because that's exactly kind of like what I've seen. You see something, you look at all your maps, it's not a plane, it's not a satellite, and then it just literally comes out, and then some even seem to kinda come in and out, before they go away. So how does it relate to UAP?
Well, I mean, if you go back to you saw that drawing I had a second ago. I'm gonna go ahead and share that again, just
Oh, yeah, for
so
sure.
um, it should still be open. Can you see that?
Yeah, let me add it. There we go.
Yeah, so we live in the universe, and from my understanding, most of the UAP actually are coming from the denser realms of experience, meaning what they're coming more from the Noviverse side of creation, you could say. So a harmonic, a higher vibration. Um, and basically, in order for something from the Noviverse, which has a very specific diameter and has a very specific orbit, like as in frequency, orbital frequency, um, the only thing it has to do is harmonize with our layer, right? So if this is naturally orbiting at 640 hertz and we naturally perceive 20 hertz, this basically needs to slow down its orbit and it needs to expand outward. So by creating an expanded light state, something from the Noviverse can harmonize with the universe. And the easiest way to think of it is through the use of a magnetic vortex. If you have a point getting bigger, that's something from the Noviverse harmonizing with the universe. But if you have something bigger getting funneled to a point, that's something from the lower verse harmonizing with the universe. Um, so, I mean, that's what that ends up showing is that like that's how the different layers overlap upon each other. And most UAP are coming from those denser realms.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense. And it's crazy, and, you're talking about this science in mind, but a lot of, people in the spiritual community or that have had contact events kind of feel this, you know what I mean? So it's very it doesn't surprise me that, like, physics can explain a lot of what people are feeling, 'cause it's all like you said, it's all energy, and you said the rippling happens.
yeah,
Um And that's not everybody's aware of that, and it's kind of crazy to think about, like, you could be in the vicinity of another being and not even know it, because if they're, like, right next to each other, but just different, resonances, then it just has to come to you or vice versa. So can you do that through meditation to start contacting, um, other beings and other in different hertz?
yeah. I mean, that gets down to your line of sight. And that's in the book, The Physics of Love. I talk a lot about that. And basically, it shows how we're all born into different fractals of delusion. And based on which spiral of energy your consciousness inhabits determines your line of sight, like literally how far into time you can see.
Oh, wow.
And so, an easy way to think of it is like everybody's born in a different country. And so, you could say that's their spiral of creation. And when it comes to how they identify themselves, they typically say, I am, and then they name their country. I am American, I am it's just Russian, Ukrainian, whatever you want to
Right.
say, right? I am
Mm,
Chinese.
mhm.
And so as you remove your I ams, your line of sight gets bigger. And the easiest way to first start thinking about it for me was, I mean, if you just think about like the spiral of a drug addict, they have a
Yeah.
30-minute line of sight. And so anyone that's kind of watching that person will kind of be able to look into their spiral of creation and say, oh, well, they're going to do this and they're going to do that.
Yeah. Oh,
You're going
yes,
to get
yes. That
their
makes
next
sense.
fix. And so as your line of sight increases, so does your level of conscious awareness. And basically, um, once you get to your golden spot, you could say like the center of your creation. I don't know. I could share that drawing too.
Oh,
If you
for
want to.
sure.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just share probably the whole book because I think that would help explain it a lot. Um,
Yeah, guys, you had to look into his book. It's really cool. It explains a lot of different things. I think I have all yours my wish list now because I'm a physical copy person, so, like, they're on my
Yeah,
physical copy wish list, but
right on. I can send you one.
that'd be I will, yeah, we can talk about that after because I just there's something about holding a book. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have physical objects. It's cool to be able to do things on the internet, but at the end of the day, it's not like a real thing almost. What just happened? Can you see my screen or?
So you shared a screen and it was us. So try again.
It's still
Um,
gonna be us. Okay, there we go. Now it's gonna be a book. This
okay,
time.
there he is. I
All
just
right,
called your
cool.
book a he.
Yeah. So I mean, we were talking about line of sight, and so it's the easiest way to think of it. So people can see this is like what I call the mind body spirit diagram. And the easiest way to think of it is if you're in a place of perfect zero, where you don't have any wants, don't wants, assumptions, or expectations, no stresses or strains are upon you, you could say you're at your golden spot. It's like your perfect stance. And like when you do martial arts, you have like your strongest stance. You could say that the golden spot is like your strongest stance of mind, body, and spirit, where it's basically where you're best rooted. And now an outside thought comes into play. Well, it creates a shifted you know body, creates
Oh,
shifted
that makes
mind.
sense.
Basically you get harmonized back to your golden spot. But what we were just talking about was line of sight and delusions, and so each one of these spirals is basically considered like a delusion. It's something you've projected, you want, you don't want, you
Mm,
expect, or you assume, and it's now creating like this spiral of creation for you, and that is your line of sight. And so when you think about just the different overlappings of lines of sight, as you start to remove delusion, you get into a bigger and bigger line of sight to where eventually you work your way to the actual center of all time. You could say the center of your true creation, where you're connected to like literally the beginning of time into the end of time, is really the easiest way to think of it. And at that point, I mean, it even goes back into like um, densities of creation over here, and then talking about an interdimensional alignment. Because when you get to your golden spot, which is like the center of like your, don't wants, assumptions, and
yeah.
expectations, um, you basically create like what I call a golden chain, and you have a dimensional alignment with your past and future selves, and you can like basically get knowledge from your past and future lives.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
And
it's
that's
really
what a lot of
interesting.
people in the spiritual sorry, I don't wanna interrupt you, but I don't wanna forget. That's what a lot of people say they're doing when they go into, like, the Akashic realm. Um,
Exactly.
and to me, I've always been like, it's the same thing, like, as the quantum field, and all these terms just overlap, and you just have another great term to help people understand it.
Yeah, I like saying the golden spot. It's like literally your perfect zero, right? It's
Yeah,
like your strongest stance where you're most confident and you feel the most love and in your love with yourself.
right,
And then basically you could say that like someone who's never experienced a doubt. So all these little fractals of man-made creation, anything that's like a pebble that's been thrown into the field of energy could be considered a man-made creation.
right.
And so those all create distortions within the natural field of energy. And so you could say this is someone like the Dalai Lama who, always has a
Yeah,
perfect reincarnation and
yeah,
always spirals perfectly back to zero. And so then this would be someone, more like me, someone who had to go to school, conquer school, had to do some other things, had to conquer those. And all these fractals of man-made creation literally take you off center. And so people will dedicate their lives sometimes to like, some type of institution. And so they'll be off center their entire life.
mm.
Um, and so that just shows that like as you remove fractals of man-made delusion, you connect back to your golden spot and you have a greater connection to the actual to reality itself, you know.
That sounds kind of, like, invasive on ourself to have these things attached to our state of creation, our pure state or our golden state, and,
Yeah.
how do people start I mean, like, I assume we can't get rid of all of them, depending on where you are in life or where you're living, but how do you start getting away of the ones that don't serve your greater purpose?
Well, I mean, that's like what's I don't know what's right and what's wrong, and it really
Right.
depends on what level of you could say experience you want to live within
Mhm.
because if you want to serve yourself, then it's all about making your tornado the greatest and the biggest.
True.
But when you look at, you could say, the fluid of time here, um, if you're just focusing on yourself, then you're just making your tornado
Okay.
bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but you're not like literally focusing on the greatest flow of
Okay.
all the dimensions of existence.
So
Uh,
once you're in the golden spot, you are you able to communicate with other people in that spot
I
too?
think
So
I think so. Um, yeah. Well, I mean,
I
for
say
me,
people,
yeah,
but I mean any conscious or sentient thing. When I say people, I mean like anything really at that point, if they're at
yeah.
that same spot.
It's basically the feel. It's like that's what you would identify yourself as almost,
Right.
um, because that becomes your identity. Uh, is the line of sight you have and the I am. And so like when you could say like at a very raw experience, you could say is I am human on Earth. But even more raw than that, you could say is I am. You could say vortex of energy, right? And then
Mhm.
you go back to the infinite spot, and then from there you can connect to the different realms essentially. Um, yeah,
And is that what people are doing when they're doing like astral traveling or they're having there's a lot of like abduction scenarios that people talk about or cases that they talk about, events, whatever you want to call it. Um d- where they feel as if like their physical body never left, but it's almost like an abduction of the consciousness.
yeah. I mean,
Um
I would call it like a telescoping of your conscious
okay.
experience. Because like if literally your consciousness is being created by orbiting energy, that's orbiting your center, your like your golden spot. If you get a stretching and crunching of your space, like literally you could have your perception pulled out into a higher or into a higher dimension, or a different dimension rather, lower or higher, whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
That's so interesting. You said you were doing like lucid dreaming
yeah,
at a very young age, and it's I always wanna know, like, what happens, like, when people astral travel and they run into other entities or beings or consciousnesses with their own, we wanna say, like, every consciousness or every dimension is, like, higher than us, like, as far like, they might not even have names but everything kinda has, like you said, its unique signature of energy. So you run into these and that's, like, another entity or even just, like, an inaudible or a voice or a color even that gives you, like, knowing or messages. So
right.
when people astral travel, how does that work with your model?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to like basically once you're at your goal, it has to do with those lines of sight. That's literally the field of energy that you're inhabiting. Like that is your experience. Is which line of sight you exist within.
That's insane. Because I was gonna ask you about holograms and fractals, but you already talked about that. So these a lot of these beings that people are in like I'm trying to put this into, like, a frame, like, people have had, like, less desirable experiences.
Right.
So in this model, how do we a lot of people are afraid of that, or they're having, like, nightmares or about these abductions happening that are violating them, and they want it to stop. What is the is there anything that you can do to kind of, like, block other people's spirals from getting into your spirals or other being spirals from getting into your spirals, or is this just something that
I wouldn't be able to, I don't know if you could 100%
Mhm.
stop, but I know you can avoid creating your own.
Okay.
Like so this drawing, let me go back to that drawing I was showing you earlier. Just it really does do good for a lot of different things. Um, it's gonna be a picture of us again. But here you go. Um, so this is all within the now, right? And in the model I have, energy is basically spiraling inward from the lower verse into our universe, into the Noviverse, and towards the golden spot. So you could say that the Noviverse is our quantum future. Like it, not the word quantum might not be the best word. It's like a subspace future. It's another realm of energy that exists that's at a higher vibration. And so our stillness, the energy that we hold, is the fluid of experience for these realms. And so we basically create their environments, is the best way to put it. And so this you could say is like a subspace past. This is a future. These realms are more harmonious and these realms are less harmonious. And so when it comes to like basically like ghosts or demons and things like that, they
Right.
also come from the Noviverse realm.
Okay.
Um, does that make more sense? Does that help out?
It does because I know a lot of people. One of the arguments or discussions that happens around like big disclosure, like they tell us everything, is when people find out that there are um, different entities or beings that can just come in and out of our realm or our lives or even our consciousness, which we think that we don't. I mean, a lot of people think that that's theirs. Nobody's going to know it's there. Nobody's going to have access to it, but you can definitely give access, and connect with other people that way. But the argument is, well, that's why they're not telling us, because once people find that out, they're going to lose their mind. People overreact about it.
Yeah, well, I think people are going to be really like nervous about the densities of creation, essentially,
Mm.
because our harmony literally creates the fluid of experience for the denser realms. And so, like the way that we interact with each other is what potentially could be existing in that realm.
Do you
Um,
see people moving more towards like a loving state, or do you feel like that's one of the things we have to work on? Because I know a lot of spiritualists and people, and you're a physicist, but I'm just saying in general, a lot of people want us all just to unite. Like, and that's
right.
not just one person. That's all sorts of, like, even scientists want that. They want a united front against. We just need to be like one. I know it's gonna sound super hippie like, but we need to be one so we can kind of feel each other out and
Well,
not do crappy things. And
I think that's like the confusing thing in a way. It's like we already are all one, and we almost need to like
Right.
relax because the more technology that we create, that's the more fractals of man-made delusion we're throwing into this perfect smooth pond of the universe that already
Oh my
exists.
goodness.
Like we already are
Yeah.
all one, and all these we're distorting the field way too much,
Yeah,
to where the
see, bad
denser
things. Yeah.
the denser realms of creation are having like a hard time because our energy is so disturbing, essentially.
Yes, yes, I can see
Um,
that, and then we're blowing things up,
yeah,
which is another discussion, why these UFOs are, like, coming around nuclear facilities, probably
yeah. I
just
mean,
like,
like
what are they
if
doing?
if
You know?
people were more connected to their golden spots, you wouldn't really need to have cell phones so much. I mean, I already know
Yeah,
like when my mom's thinking about me. I know when my brother's thinking
yeah,
about me, like when my
yeah,
really good friends are thinking about me.
right,
I know when people are thinking about me, like I don't need the cell phone. I know when they need something, I
right,
know what. And so like as we create more man-made technologies and our you could say our focus of mate selection is geared towards man-made infrastructures, we basically are being shifted based off of our natural selection away from being in harmony with the earth. And so I
right,
think there will be a trend of going back towards more of like a natural instincts being like a
yes.
deciding factor for human growth. But at this time, I think we're becoming more and more distorted.
Oh,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. So less in harmony with the universe, but there is that movement towards oneness. But that's where people need to kind of maybe realize that that oneness needs to incorporate the earth and the universe as well,
yes, yes,
not just
mhm,
oneness with each other and some type of political affiliation, but oneness with
right.
the universe, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree, and then the planet we live on, I mean, the planet we live
yeah,
on is so
we share it.
important.
It's
Yeah.
one world. It's the human experience. It's the human condition, and it should be the best experience for any human being on it. Like we shouldn't be forced to do things we don't want to do. Like this is the human condition.
Yes,
Uh, yeah,
that's all very fascinating, and the universe is like us. Like there's beings that are. We have some people that want to hurt each other. We have some people that just want to hug everyone. So it's silly to think that just because they have like technology that can transcend these dimensions easier than we can, that they are somehow, like, I don't want to say better than us because that sounds so horrible, but people are like, "Oh, well, you think they're gonna visit us? They're so far ahead of us." But just because you're technologically advanced, that doesn't mean that you're advanced as far as, like, your, oneness goes, or your reality realizing that you're one with all these different dimensions and beings, because
Yeah,
we're
I
seeing
mean,
that now, like, we're one with our technology, but we're not connecting with the planet, we're not connecting with each other, in person, and
and
that's
that's
a
what
lot of.
yeah, I mean, and that's what inhibits us from being able to use those more advanced technologies to begin with. Like, because we do have access, from my understanding, like we do have those advanced technologies.
Yes.
But it comes down to our understanding of how they work, and how literally our wants, don't wants, our assumptions and expectations influence the process of using those technologies.
Yeah.
When it comes to like you could say portal technology and things like that. Like if you're very pacey and very wanty, it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah, somebody else told me that, I got an interesting message from somebody one time, and they claimed to be working, you know, at an underground base and all this stuff, and they knew
Right?
all this stuff, but one thing that they did say is, these devices that were recovered from technology from other, I mean, people say other planets, but it could very well be other realms, right? So the technology recovered from things like, what people call UFO crashes, like only certain people can operate those technologies, and the people that can operate those technologies are very selfless. They want no money out of working with it. They want to advance, in a non-selfish way, our progression as
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah, no,
So
I think like when it comes to those lines of sight, you realize each one's a bigger and bigger flow, and human is a big part of it, and it is all the way through. Like I think that some of the lines of the sight that we can incorporate are pretty big and pretty fantastic.
yes, yes.
Um,
Um, you said that, yeah, and people don't understand what they can do with meditation, and that's another thing. You had mentioned a gray being that you had an encounter with.
yeah.
What did the being look like? Did have these be and has this happened more than once when you're meditating or entering,
Yeah,
your
no, I
golden
mean, this is
spot?
like my meditation guide, you could say.
Okay,
Yeah, no, like it's like half a nutshell. I mean, nowadays I don't. It's more clear that as I'm an adult, it's not really a nutshell. It's like bottom half of an orb, because it's like cut in half.
okay,
Where the
okay,
top of it is literally like the body of it kind of coming out of it and
okay.
holding its hands like out like that. And then that's how the telepathic communication, you could say, it happens. But yeah, so I mean, there were a lot of lessons. The very first one being like, the delusion removal. And then I had to do
Right.
with like basically learning to control emotions, right? Learning to control like even like shivers, like so go out on the coldest days, but don't wear like just go out in shorts and
Yes.
just stay nice and warm. Then even like I lived out in the woods for like 9 months with my camper basically, and built a
Oh,
platform
so
up in the
nice.
trees and surrounded the whole thing with like color changing LEDs.
Oh my god, that sounds amazing. That's like a
Yeah.
dream.
So like
Sounds like a beautiful dream.
yeah, it was pretty sweet. I would start off with all the lights set to red, and I was doing rooting exercises, and then every 15 minutes, kind of slowly go towards the indigo, and then by the
Oh,
end, do out of body meditations.
I'm
Uh,
so happy that I'm not the only weirdo that does stuff like this. Like, you know,
yeah,
I'm not in a tree, which would be amazing, but I do stuff like that I have a crystal room.
right.
My husband's very nice to let me have my own room, probably because he doesn't want that crap all over the house. But yeah, so you're doing this meditations and you're working up in the colors.
Yeah, no, I mean that was just
And you
one
said out
example
of
of
body experience.
that. Yeah,
I'm
that
doing
was one. It was So what's interesting? So when I got to the golden spot, you could say when I was 10 or so, I was shown like I was told also take a picture of this. Remember this, like remember the feeling of this.
Yeah.
This is you in your golden spot. You're good. And so basically, I got a photo of mind, body, spirit in that state. But it's like now when I walk around in the world, I am as well. I'm a human. Everyone's filled with
Right.
their spirals of wants, don't wants, assumptions, and their delusions
Yeah.
essentially. And so it's learn to walk people to the golden spot. So help get people remove them of their spirals, right? And so when it comes to color yoga and other techniques that I've been practicing, a lot of it has to do with finding ways to teach other people, right? And
Yeah.
so
I
that's
think a lot
why
of
I use so
people.
many different tools and mediums to spread the messages that I'm trying to say, like through the piano, through my cartoon characters, my skateboard.
Yeah, I saw your
Um,
little cartoon guy. Your
yeah,
skateboard guy. I'm gonna
Yeah,
say,
like
Elena, I'll get to your question in a minute here. She wants to hear about your experience. Can you clarify? Do you know of a certain experience or experiences? Just can you put a clarification into the chat so I can ask him for you? But so you're trying to teach people how to do this, and
yeah, so
um,
color yoga is one method.
so what is that? That sounds so cool. Like I know what I think it might be, but what is color yoga?
Well, I mean, I haven't officially released it, but basically
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it's good.
I didn't
It's
This is
good.
a Looshes Lab, exclusive, guys.
Yeah, no, totally. I am talking with an instructor,
Oh, cool.
see if she wants to teach it. But basically, like surround the deck with color changing LEDs,
Oh,
and you start
cool.
off with red, and it's rooting exercises, and you just slowly work through different yoga. Like I never did yoga, but like you work through different postures.
I'm
Um,
surprised.
yeah, you work through the different. I did I Ching Ching.
Oh,
So
okay. So you did, because a lot of people would do, some sort of body movement that makes energy move.
totally,
So,
and I did Tai Chi, and I grew up doing
okay.
all kinds of my personal training stuff that I
Right.
was shown in meditation, but I was never taught any of it,
That's insane, because a lot of the stuff you're saying, like, people can not exactly, because you're adding some new stuff that I haven't heard of before, but at the base level, like Buddhists train to do this. People have to leave their home, sell all their belongings to learn this, and here you are taking a nap, and you wake up with color yoga.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
it's
it's
amazing.
intense. It can be intense, like because yeah, people that know me know I'll just wake up like talking too as well. Like I'm still in
Oh
it.
wow.
And like one time I woke up later, I was like, gravity doesn't come from the center of the earth. It's like, what are you talking about? you know. Um, but what was I gonna get at? Yeah, no, lots of different lessons there. It's super interesting. So like basically that's why I wrote the books based off of, you could say, modern physics. So people that are very physical and materialistic and like science can get into them and start looking, into that possibility, you could say.
Yeah, it seems like your books there's something for everybody to
Yeah.
attract, what they're looking for to read. Now, Elena said earlier, I'm not sure if she's still here. She said, I'm here to hear about Alexei's experience right now." I don't know if she's talking about, I mean, you kind of have talked about your experience, but what was your most prominent experience with another being or a craft or, something like that?
Well, it's definitely I mean, the most memorable one you could say was when I was 10, and like literally the being came and removed the delusions of man, show me the delusions of mankind.
Okay.
How we put the rocks where they are, we put the streets where they are. We've designed every single language we speak.
Yeah.
Like we create our
Well, even
philosophy.
the littlest things, like this pen, like I brought it here,
Exactly.
and I might be like, "Oh, I love this pen," then it ran out of ink, now I'm wrecked,
Yeah.
like, it's little tiny things too, right?
To every single thing. I mean, I'm an artist and an inventor, and like I always tell the students kind of jokingly that like my goal is to go out into the woods with nothing but my bare hands and come out with like the most luxurious gold watch ever designed and created by mankind. Like with nothing but nature, you should be able to create anything. But like every single thing we look at, like this drywall was designed by a man. The picture
Yeah,
frame. Um, yeah, like my cell phone. Like the computer
like
mouse.
mhm.
We literally create every single thing in our day, and that includes philosophies. It includes
Yeah,
systems.
that goes so deep though.
Yeah.
That's even the way you feel about other people,
Right.
the way you feel about yourself,
Yep.
where you wanna go in life and how you're going to get there, your choices.
Yeah. I mean,
It
and like we define everything too through categorizations.
mm,
And so like I have a book of poetry too. It's like part of the books, and like one of the things I say is like we named animals, right? Like look at the
yeah,
giraffe, and then like we make assumptions with it too. It's like, oh look, it's
mhm.
tall and goofy. It's like, so we just walk around categorizing, and like
Right, right.
it's
It
it's
could have
almost like
all the secrets of the universe, and we're saying it's silly and cute and not paying attention to it.
I don't know, like we just make up like these stories, and like they are real. They describe our physical
Yes.
reality, and they're great for communication and getting things done and stuff. But
Right.
it's very fabricated. We have designed and created our entire environment. And so that's like one of the most memorable experiences, you could say. What was
That's
that?
amazing, and that unlocks a lot for sure. I have another I hope you don't mind if I'm taking questions,
No, for sure. Go
from
ahead.
them. I'm only gonna ask respectful ones, of course. I don't have a lot of trolls, so knock on something, but, because I don't have any mods either. If you want a mod, send me a DM because I don't have any mods. Anyways,
Yeah.
she wants to know your, Kat wants to know your thoughts on reincarnation.
Yeah, I mean, that basically even goes back to the book. I'm gonna do a share screen.
I love it. He's like, I have a page for that."
Yeah, well, we were talking about
The
that a little
diagrams
bit,
help though, for sure, because you can tell us all this, and without a picture, some people just won't be able to conceptualize it.
right? So we were talking about. See, I didn't fully explain this, but like, so when you have the mind, body, spirit diagram, right? So this is like we talked about this a little bit. Like, this is your
Mhm.
golden spot, right? Your perfect stance of perfect zero, where you're literally connected to the beginning of time and to the end of time. That's
Yeah.
like your greatest line of sight. And then all of a sudden you have like a want, and you get
Yeah.
this spiral. But as
Mm,
this whole thing's
mhm.
going on, um, we're slowly drifting inward in the biggest black hole of all time. So like we have this thing called the habitable spiral of perception. And so our field of energy that we exist within is slowly going into denser and denser realms. Um, and so when it comes into reincarnation, and you have these different spirals of individual lives. So this is like your individual life, right? Like the Dalai Lama,
Mhm.
he's perfect reincarnation or
Right.
perfect life, you could say. This is like your average human has a lot of delusions.
Yeah.
So they're very rusty, and because they're very pacey. They have a lot of wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations. Um, and so when you think about energy drifting along that habitable spiral of perception, and you have these different structures, you could consider that they make structures through the different densities of creation. And so someone who reincarnates and always goes back to their golden spot creates something like this throughout their lifetime. And so they have the ability
Oh,
to
wait, are we
connect.
supposed to have a picture up?
Yeah, can you not see
Oh my god,
anything?
you didn't put it up. I'm sorry. I thought you
Oh,
were
that's
looking for
hilarious.
it. I thought you were looking for it with the clicking. I'm so sorry.
I was
I was
showing
like,
awesome diagrams the whole
"Oh
time.
my goodness." We're gonna have to rewind, guys.
Can you see this now?
Okay, there it is. Yeah, it wasn't up before. I don't
That's
think
pretty
that you
funny.
shared it. I think you opened it and then it didn't share for some reason.
That's so funny.
Oh,
So
so Dalai Lama, I think, is
just
or
to
what
go
did
back,
he
I mean, this is like a very simple concept of the densities of creation right here, where we have our universe. Noviverse is more inwards towards the crystal size, essentially. So like that's where crystals are their own experience themselves, and we're like a crystal to a bigger experience. Um, and so when you think about the structures you make, we have the habitable spiral of perception. So this is something I showed that you guys didn't see. So as we're drifting inward along this habitable spiral, um, that's our field of energy. That's our entire universe drifting inward. Okay. And so then basically what I was getting at is that you have these different structures here that people get that create. So you have someone like the Dalai Lama, they create a structure like this, right? They're always creating from their zero. So every time they have a creation, a want, don't want, they have it from a point of zero. If you create from off center, that's when you basically break out into these fractals of delusion that dissolve away. This like creations from off center are not long lasting.
Okay.
So basically, people that have a lot of wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations create structures like this. And then you have something more like the Dalai Lama, who always creates from their zero, creates structures like this. And
So
so,
beautiful. That one the other
yeah,
one
I
is
mean,
like I think a lot of us feel the other one, especially people have, like if you have, like, ADD or, you feel like there's so many different
well, I mean,
things
even just filling up
everywhere.
my car with gas, like the gas tank is telling me I need to go inside and buy a smoothie. It's like
Yeah,
the gas machine.
yeah.
So there's all these like society's constantly bombarding you with all these delusions.
Stop spiraling me, society.
Basically,
I
yeah,
have
stop,
enough
stop
spirals
sending these
already.
thoughts towards me. I don't need them. I don't want them. They're taking me away from my center because someone's just trying to make money off me.
Yeah, but what if
But
your spirals that you're creating are your own crazy thoughts, like, or
well, I mean,
thoughts that don't benefit you or don't benefit society or don't benefit the dimensions that we're hanging out in that we don't even realize are there half the time?
they won't last when it gets to the golden spot. Like
Okay,
they'll have to break away before you continue onward towards
okay.
center, and this ultimately
Gotta
ties
flush
into
it
a
down to the
bigger
center.
picture. Because I'm trying to get into the reincarnation. So basically, you have different densities within this vortex. And so every frequency, because this represents every single point in space, and so every frequency comes from a different orbit within time. Um, and when it comes to reincarnation, if you always create from zero, you get something more like this as you blip in and out of solidity through your past and future lives.
Mm,
And so, like, literally, you have a better mental connection to your past and future lives. This is like I call it a golden chain.
okay.
And so when you have a lot of wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations in your lives, though, you create more structures more like this that don't pass
Okay,
information as good.
okay.
Uh, and so what's interesting, though, is that basically in this giant vortex, it all exists in the now. There's only now. And so by correcting your now moment and connecting to your golden spot, it helps correct the future state, but also your past state. And so that's when you get like
Mhm.
recrystallization of human consciousness during different events, right? And you get different seed crystals essentially tossed into liquid distortions. Um, it gets a little out there, but basically it shows that you have these outer realms of experience, right?
Yes, and you can never get too out there for me, so for the
Yeah,
record.
yeah. I mean, so the outer realms of experience harmonize as the
Oh,
energy drifts inwards towards our experience. So
yikes.
this would be the lower verse. Energy
Okay.
comes in from their wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations, hits our layer of the universe. We do our thing. The energy more inward is a creation of our stillness.
Okay.
Um, and so that shows basically how we are the water of time for denser creations. In order for them to harmonize, like the outer realms did a really good thing for us and gave us a
Mm.
smooth environment to be created. But now we're doing this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're very pacey. We're not creating a very harmonized,
No.
denser creation. And so, like, I mean, when you talk about 5G, I don't even really want to get too much into our like technologies, but when you talk about all the electromagnetic static, you could say that we're tossing out into our field of energy. We're making that even crazier.
That's kinda scary because we don't know, what it's going to do, forward and backward, as you say, because once you're at a certain point, the time is it's you're omnipresent, in a way. Mm, so
When
if you're doing all this stuff now, it can affect
Yeah, I mean that's what quantum entanglement shows basically is that
Right,
like um I mean, I don't know if that's exactly what quantum entanglement shows, but it shows that energy travels faster than light. And the
right.
way that I like to think of it is that it's more of like a sound wave propagating within this fifth dimensional view. And so if you know this is like the few, let me let me go up a little bit here. Can you see my screen still?
Yes, we can see it,
Okay.
yeah. I
So
think
like
maybe
if
it didn't click over all the way over or something because I didn't even see it, but we see it now.
yeah, I mean this is just our now moment, like this being represented by this magnifying lens. And so something that happens in the now basically creates effects in the past and creates effects in the future. If it's all just one field of energy, um, there's only one moment, and it's the now. It's, you know, the greater
Mm.
now.
That's very interesting. In priestessing training, we learned, like, when you're doing your healing of, your inner child healing or your shadow work or your healing things about you to become a better person, it does that. It goes out in butterfly effect, whatever people wanna call it, ripples outwards to other people, and it affects people as
Yep.
well. But it also one interesting thing that you mentioned is my spiritual mentor at the time had mentioned if you heal yourself, you're healing generations. She would say like 7 generations forward and 7 generations back, but it's
Yeah.
actually infinite. So, it's interesting how some spiritual concepts tie into your model.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's like when it's so wild too, because when people like look out and they, the ancestors are in the stars. Well, based on this view, the ancestors are in the stars, and they're like
Mhm.
their energy is coming inward towards us, overlapping with us. Our energy is the energy of the denser creations. So yeah, we definitely influence the next seven or more, I would say infinite generations.
Right, right.
I do a simple calculation, and I'm not going to say it's like the answer by any means, in the liquid light state universe, but I get 700 million years. Like so, like our now moment can influence the next 700 million years.
That's insane to even think
But
about because
I don't know if that's like that's just my theoretical model, right? I'm not saying
right. But
that
you're
is.
allowed to have theories. I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah, he's not saying he knows everything. I know people will be like, "How do you know?"
Well, I
But
mean, I
he
come
does
to
have some
the
solid
theoretical
theories.
size of if you think that so our human consciousness is made of delta through fast gamma, and our delta wave, if it's going to orbit at 1 hertz and you say it's in a black hole, so it's accelerating towards center at light speed while orbiting, it has a specific diameter. It's the diameter associated with Schwarzschild rate, of a black hole,
Yes.
with an orbit of 1 hertz. And so that has a radius. And if you think about our line of sight, as in like how many times humans take a picture with their brain in a second, and you multiply that times the speed of light, you realize that the light that you see within every conscious snapshot only goes a certain distance. And what's so fascinating is that those two numbers ended up being the same number. And so
Wow.
that's almost like the sphere of conscious perception is the delta wave. That's our biggest wave that exists within our creation. And then if you think about,
You
well,
have a
what's
whole video about this too, guys. You have to go to his YouTube, if you want, because you did a video about the sphere on itself or by
yeah, I mean,
itself.
I've done a few different ones at this
Yeah.
point. I don't even remember how many. But then I was just like, I was thinking, so then like that's the biggest wave that exists within our now moment is our delta wave of conscious experience. But the fastest wave that we can see and experience is blue, right? Just to
That's
keep
so
it really,
crazy.
really simple, is the color blue.
It's
And
so
so the
sad when you even see the diagram, like, basic learning, this is the color spectrum, and this is what you
right,
can see, like, you're blind.
yeah. No, I mean, and it comes down to like the future is somewhat in a scaled, stretched waveform. And so when you think about the stretching and crunching of space, and you think about just relative time dilations, if you wanted to crunch the longest wave perceivable to the shortest wave perceivable, the amount of time dilation is like 700 million years. So that's why I was based off of like what our consciousness is actually interacting with and what we can physically observe with our eyes. There's a 700 million year kind of time dilation, based off frequency. And I'm not so it's like literally a 540 nanometer wave to 1 times 10 to the 7 meter. So there's a big difference there, is what I'm getting at. Um,
Yeah. It
yeah, so
sounds,
potentially we can influence 700 million years into the future, but I don't
that
know.
well, there's spiritual concepts that say that too,
Right.
so it's interesting to find somebody that can put some numbers to it. We did have one more question. We have, so Logan Black says, "So if we didn't create everything around us, what would be the alternative?" The
Um,
golden spot, maybe? Because if we didn't add anything into, like, our existence, you know?
yeah, no, I get that. I mean, there's different layers. There's so you get to a point though where you're that's why I say like at the end of my book, I basically put this into a philosophical discussion called the shift in natural selection. Um, and at the end of it, I basically say that like we get to a point where society is so controlled and manipulated that our focus of mate selection has shifted from a natural state to one that's being more man-made and created. So like you could say that when people were first evolving, our instinctual drive was more towards someone who was a caring person, like a caring mother and a guy who could hunt really good. But nowadays, our focus is more geared towards money and technological successes, and so the focus of mate selection has shifted to like a technological one. Um, and so because of that, you could say the natural genetics and like of being in tune with the earth are becoming distorted because our focus of mate selection has shifted. I'm not saying we wouldn't still live in an environment that we manipulate in order to create a more luxurious life. But when you get to a point where you're born into forced infrastructures, like every single person needs to go to school, every single person needs to make money. And then now all of a sudden people are literally walking around in a state of a Stanford prison guard experiment because they associate their IMs with a certain race or a monetary class or something of that nature. It becomes problematic and very limiting. And so it's not so much creating physical things like that. It's more creating structures that create mental slavery. Is more of the forced infrastructures that I'm talking about as far as creating things. So like right now, people look to the government for answers. Why would you ever look to the government for answers? That like that's what people do. They look to their teacher. They haven't been taught to look within. Um, and so I'm kind of rambling, but that's kind of what it ends up getting at is like if people didn't focus so much on other people's creations, they would be more confident. And so it comes down to not being able to be controlled, to having more of a free life, less anxiety. Um, and so, I mean, what would people create? They'd probably still create things. I mean, I still draw, I still do stuff, but I don't try to put people into forced infrastructures, and I don't try to make as much money as possible off of every person I meet.
Yeah.
I'm here to help everyone grow as a team. Um, that's my goal is for everyone to grow, not for me to grow and keep other people down.
And
It's
that's
not
what
what
we should all want. I feel like we should want that for each other, and
yeah.
it'll benefit more than just us, as we know, 700 million or billion.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, like, I guess, like, to just kind of keep rambling on that a little bit more. It's like, what would we create? Well, our creation should be more focused on long-lasting type of loving thought. You could say like movements as opposed to like motions based off of fear and insecurity. Like the whole military industrial complex is based off of fear and insecurity. Um, right? And so that's literally what we spend most of our money on. Where if all that money went into creating a sustainable environment or like compassion towards others, the world would be a little bit different. So that's kind of more what I'm meaning.
a lot of people feel that we're putting money in the wrong areas when
Yeah, I
there's.
mean that's all my taxpayer dollars. I'm not.
Mhm.
I don't want to pay that so you can go build weapons. Like
Right, right.
that's not what I gave you money for.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a complicated issue that we feel like we're out of control of, and it's something that we're feeding into because by existing almost. So,
Well, yeah, we're born into fractals of delusion, right? Like I was born into Cape Town, South Africa during the apartheid revolution.
oh wow.
And so we moved to the United States where people could be free, right? And so everybody's born into these different fractals of delusion, and whether or not they know it, they're somewhat forced to do things, whether or not they realize it or not. And there's not it's impossible to actually live on Earth almost, and like because you have to
Mm.
pay for water now.
Oh, yes.
Like so it's wild. You literally like imagine an extraterrestrial coming to the planet and then saying I'd like water, and then someone saying, "Oh yeah, here now give me $2."
5.99.
Yeah, you're gonna charge me for
I mean,
water?
there
This
was the case where, the one craft landed in the field and asked for water and then gave some pancakes back, so
that's pretty cool.
I'll have to
But like
send you the case. It's a real case.
that's what it more means, like the human condition. Like this is the human experience and this is the earth. We're born in a paradise. Heaven already exists on earth, and through our distortions and wants and don't wants, we've literally kind of created this very distorted reality where you literally have to pay for water. Um,
Yeah,
you can't just walk in over and pick fruit from your tree in your front yard. And we live in a very like man-made world. Yeah.
yes. And it's like I hear people saying, like, there's certain places you're not allowed to collect rainwater, and it's
I
just,
can't collect rainwater in Florida here in
oh, wow.
my county. It's illegal. It is illegal for me to collect water in a bucket when it rains. Yeah.
You better keep your buckets inside, Alexei.
But yeah, that's
I
like
know.
the laws people have made, or they're so crazy. And so that like they literally control all the pacing motions of our lives. They're
Yes.
spirals of delusion that man have created.
Mhm. And this could be like a whole 'nother hour, guys, and I'm curious about your 5G thoughts, so we're gonna have to have a part 2 with Alexei because he's got a lot more to tell us, and we have a lot more questions for you.
For
But I
sure. Yeah,
thought,
we're just getting started.
yeah, I know. We'll have you on again. maybe like in the fall because I'm moving. So I'm gonna get everything situated, and then I'll have all my part
Yeah.
two people come on and come up with better questions and finish your books and all that stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much where it's at. The meditation lesson, I've been learning different lessons and stuff
you
like
have a
that.
couple meditation tutorials on your
They're
YouTube,
just,
right?
yeah, they're kind of silly. They're more just like readings from the book. So they're basically like because the book's kind of like the whole thing's very theoretical and very like thought provoking, you could say. And so that makes a really good meditation exercise if you just kind of sit and listen to a section of the book. So I have 10-minute long readings on my YouTube that are just great for like short meditations, basically.
Well, that's good. People listen to, audio books all the time to
Yeah.
relax. So why not listen to something and learn about parallel existences and other dimensions?
Yeah. And then I have each book read word for word. But those videos are about like 6 or 8 months old. So if someone's looking for one of those, they might need to scroll through the YouTube. So like 8 months ago, and then they'll have the entire book read word for word.
Yeah, that's another
Uh,
cool thing is you sell the books, but you also make them so accessible on your YouTube channel.
yeah.
So that I think that's great because people have to make livings, of course, but I think that it's cool that you're offering it to people and they don't even have to read; they just have to listen. So
Yeah.
if
I
you
mean,
want to learn, be lazy, relax.
I'd love to make this my full-time thing, but like at the same time, some part of, you could say, the requirement of being able to receive the information is that it needs to be out there for free for everyone.
Okay, and I've
You
heard
know,
that
that
from other people too that get information.
it's the
So
requirement, and I basically, my books are written word for word how I hear it. I write the entire book in 2 days, and I don't really do any corrections or anything like that. And so all the graphics, all the drawings, everything comes in the very powerful vision. And these books were accompanied with shooting stars, meaning like after I finished writing it, it's like literally go outside, look up, and you can see the craft. So I just say like, what the hell? Why not? To take one
right.
step out my front door, look up, and I just see a shooting star shoot off. So that was for the Crystal of Time, which was written at 2/21, February 21st of 2021, and then the Physics of Love came 12/22/21, and that one also had a shooting star with it. So
Wow.
very um, synchronistic events for me, like to the point where it's just like, wow.
Yes, the synchronicity is another one we could talk about all night. Kat says I like him explaining books, he helps me see what he's saying. Yes, you're able to make this for anybody. For technical people, they can just read it, but if you're visual, then you have the diagrams. If you just want to like relax because you don't want to hold anything and read, you just want to close your eyes and have the visualization off the words. He has the recordings, so it's very accessible knowledge to everybody and it's very interesting. So, Alexei, I'm going to start wrapping it up. Do you have any closing thoughts? Are you going to be anywhere next?
Um, I mean, I'm all over the place.
Yes.
Work on a few different projects. But what I was going to say is just to go off of, I mean, check out LuciusLabs.com. I have links to all the podcasts and everything I've done there.
Mhm.
But as
That
far as
that
like,
link's also in the description, guys. So, I
yeah,
have
as
his
far as like
address.
helping with the book, I also have videos of me walking through the book as well. And each one of those is like a 25-minute video where I go step by step through each book individually. So I have like the books read word for word. I have me walking through the books. Yeah, it's all there. So
Well, thank you so much for your time. And make sure you follow him. His YouTube channel is great. He's got all those resources there, but I do have his Lucius Labs in the description and I'll add your social media. You're just on Twitter, right? Or are you on Instagram as well?
I'm on Instagram, Lucius_labs. Just like
Okay.
yeah, just split it into 2 words.
Okay.
And then Facebook, I'm on it there as like Skate Case, but also Alexei Novitzky.
Mhm. Yeah, you
Um,
gotta check out his skateboards, they're freaking ridiculous.
yeah, they're pretty sweet. I have like a electric skateboard that's been
He's just gonna have
animated.
to show and tell.
Yeah, no, I have to show now. Basically, this is a skateboard, right? And it's the only one in the world that you can open up. And so for this one, since I've been doing a lot of traveling and giving lectures on innovation and creativity, I turned him into a cartoon character that goes on adventures promoting innovation, creativity, and sustainability. And so this is actually his board game where you start on the Earth and you end on the moon. Inside this board comes, his coloring book with like all that other stuff. And so this is the Ollie World board game.
Oh,
And then there's also
nice.
like the electric model. Yeah, that's the skate case thing for sure. That's a lot of
Well
fun. It's been
well,
on
thanks for
display at the
showing that.
Smithsonian. It was right next to Neil Armstrong's return module, which was actually pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Uh,
Yeah, that's I was looking at the coloring pages the other day too. So, yeah, 'cause he has those on the website too. You don't even have to like, he has some of them on there you can just print out if you wanna color.
yeah, for
Well
sure. But yeah, I mean, there's links to all that stuff at Lucius
oh, of
Labs
course. Yeah,
for
just go
sure.
check out his website. I'll add his social media stuff. And thanks to everybody listening now, later, past, present, future, all that good stuff. And thanks, Alexei. Hang out for a minute and have a good night, everyone, or day, whenever you're listening.